Hello, and welcome to Just a Dog Podcast, the podcast for thoughtful dog lovers and guardians. I am your host, Nadine. My guest today is Professor Ádám Miklósi, one of the most respected researchers in dog behaviour and cognition. He founded the Family Dog Project in Hungary, which has shaped much of what we know now about how dogs think and how they relate to us. In this episode, we talk about how his work began, what science can tell us about the minds of dogs, and why our homes, cultures, and expectations shape behaviour far more than we realise. This conversation will help you to understand your own dog with fresh eyes. Hi, so nice to meet you. I'm Nadine.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Okay, wonderful. So, Ádám, I am super curious about how your journey started. Firstly, you grew up in Hungary, as far as I'm aware.
Yes, that's true.
How did your journey with dogs specifically begin?
My journey was very simple how it started. I was told basically to work on dogs. So this is the short summary of it. So I never had a dog. Actually, there was no dog in our family. I am the kind of a control group, as my colleagues explain that. So I can see quite objectively this word. But really, the idea for working on dogs came from my professor. So Vilmos Csányi, who is a professor of ethology in Hungary. In the end of the 90s, we worked on paradise fish. This is a little aquarium fish, and we were sort of happily working and looking at anti-predator behavior and studying these species in various ways. But then there's a point where we decided that we want to do something differently or something new. So that's when he had the suggestion that let's work on dogs, because actually he had dogs when he was a child. We discussed the future of our research, and then this idea came up, and I like challenges. So I said, okay, let's try. I mean, we had no experience. It was really 30 years ago. So it was 1994. And there was also no literature on dogs in science. So it was really a very strange situation that we had no idea where to start. So this is how I got into this world of dogs. And I'm still actually enjoying it, even being an outsider. So really, I'm very grateful for this chance, because I was always interested actually in animal minds. So what goes on in the mind of the animals and how they think, how their behavior depends on their thinking. So for me, whether it would be another creature would not really matter too much. But eventually it was the dog that we started to study.
So you're an ethologist? What is ethology?
Yeah, so in English, this word is probably not so familiar in England or in many English-speaking countries. Ethology is actually a continental expression, a word that could be translated like studying animal behavior. So when you see scientific papers on animal behavior, this is the scientific word for that science, is actually ethology, coined this word. And the difference, because a lot of cases actually when we talk about dog behavior, you have this other science, which is psychology, that also works actually with dogs or sometimes with humans or are interested in this. And you have also this expression, maybe animal psychologists, which are not used so much now recently, but people probably have some connection to that expression. Actually, why ethology is different, because we are really very closely connected to biology. So, and biology, the fundamentals of biology are the study of evolution, and we have this vision following Darwin to that animals are having a connected in a way in time and space through these evolutionary mechanisms. So for us, actually, the dog and the study of behavior is very closely connected to the natural behavior, what you can observe in these animals. And actually the big discovery was, and I think that was where this whole project really started to get a shape, when we try to argue that actually the dogs are in a natural world when they are living with humans. And when you observe them living with humans, this is quite nature for those dogs that we call family dogs. Not all dogs actually living in this, but that population, that community of dogs are in a nature, even when we just in like your case now, your dog is now in the nature of dogs, say it's in your flat, but that doesn't matter really. And what we're interested in, what goes on in this natural situation between a human and the dog.
Okay, so is that like human-animal bond related, or specifically focused on the behavior or psychology or everything together?
Well, the interesting thing is that when we talk about an environment, then the question is what is in this environment? And in the human environment, there are typically humans and the dogs. So when you're studying dogs, you can't just take the dog isolated and investigating and focusing it on the dog when we're talking about family dogs, because there's always a human around. There's no family dog without a human. So it comes together, so to speak. So therefore, we can also say that what we are doing is investigating the dog-human relationship, and then obviously how these quite different creatures, the humans and the dog, that have a very different evolutionary history, come together at some point in this story, let's say 50,000 or 30,000 years ago, and then started to form this what you might call a bond or an alliance or whatever, and they have to contribute to that. So both the humans had to accept the dog as a member of their group, and also the dog had to accept the human somehow as a social partner. So this is what is the challenging question for us, how these two living beings make this very strange group, or even some people might say it's a family, just like for a human family.
I don't know if this is true or not, but recently I read something that said something like 80% of the world's dogs are actually free roaming dogs.
Yes, that's true.
Oh, okay. So taking free roaming dogs and putting them in family situations, have you seen any data that could be used as a predictor for how successful that relationship would be?
Well, this is it's a good question, but you don't just pick an animal from its environment and put it in a different one. This never really works up. So you could also say that, what if picking a lion and then putting it into your flat, and how interesting it would be. I could imagine it would be very exciting to make some interesting observations. Probably you wouldn't like the idea, actually. So the same would be with such a free roaming dog. And here the difference is that some populations of the free roaming dogs or free ranging dogs that are living in that situation for many generations. So that means that they have been selected for actually living without the humans, but they are dogs, which means they are also domesticated. So if you would take actually would pick not an adult free roaming dog, but a puppy taking from a litter, then and put it in your flat, and then provide it with all kinds of socialization experiences, then I would assume it would maybe not develop in a way that you might experience with a Labrador or a Golden or whatever, but it would be quite close. So this means that actually dogs have this potential to become a family dog. And depending on the breed or the genetic makeup in general, would determine how far they get on that road, and also on the socialization experience. So you can actually also achieve quite a lot if you really socialize a real wolf, very extensively. And I know that because we did some experiments with wolves and got these kind of observations many years ago. But for the wolves, you really need to invest 24-hour interaction, and you have to be really very intensively providing this social environment, and even then you never turn a wolf into a dog, so that's impossible to do, but you can achieve something. So this is this interaction between the genetics and environment, which is actually very important. So just taking a free roaming dog home, I think it's not a good idea, neither for the dog nor for the family.
What drives you? Is it legacy? Is it curiosity? What pushes you forward every day?
Well, this is actually complicated to answer, because on one hand is science, so really finding out what I said. So the question is still there: what goes on in a dog mind? How we can find this out by different means and different research questions, and putting the dogs in different situations. So this is obviously what drives me. On the other hand, if you have this drive, the problem is now how to get the money for doing that, and how to get especially the young scientists the opportunity to get involved, because for this you need money and good minds. I mean, from those students and young people, making them interested in this. So, and I'm also very happy to work in a group setting, so having lots of people around, and we encourage each other, sort of motivate each other, because actually science can be sometimes very bored. You have to repeat these experiments all over. It's actually very difficult sometimes to find devoted owners who would participate. So there are a lot of everyday issues that you have to overcome by this kind of motivation. So, but basically, I think, and another issue is that maybe it's also not secondary, but not so important, but important. Maybe we go also about that, to inform the community of dog owners that they could become a better owners. Don't really tell them how to train the dog, but just to give them this kind of background knowledge that what what you can do with your dogs. There are so many situations rather than having your mobile phone and walking with your dog while actually texting somebody. So this is what I'm not happy to see, for example, so on. So also maybe, yes, helping the dogs as well a little bit to find a better way into their communities and even to have a better understanding of this relationship. Because some people, when we talk about bond, but you mentioned this word, how this bond is actually managed, what you can do, what you should do, or rather avoid if you can. So this kind of information, this is important, and also obviously want to support it by data. So it's about research.
So there is quite a lot. I understand that dog-specific research is fairly new in terms of decades, but there is a lot of research already. And what I've discovered is that research stays very high level for people who understand it, who work within that kind of environment. How can we kind of distill those bits of information, research, discoveries, so that it reaches everyday dog people easier?
Well, it's difficult. So there's a change now. It has a good aspect and a bad aspect. So the generations who have dogs now in cities, usually they have no experience with how to live with animals. 100 years ago, children, I mean, our grandparents maybe, and also probably your grandparents or some, maybe the grandparents, they grew up in a village situation. Even in the cities, there were a different type of interaction with animals. So you learn about cows and dogs and cats and all kinds of creatures. So now it is different because the children are sort of isolated. And then suddenly comes this idea, for example, during the COVID, that, oh, let's get a dog. How exciting. But then they realize very soon after the first day that it's actually very too exciting for them. So now what you do, you get books or you go into the internet and ask about people. So you want knowledge. And that's where now this is the good and the bad side, because now there is a demand for the scientific knowledge. Now what you're asking isn't how to explain this. And what we have seen, and actually also doing partly now, is that there are scientists who are willing to offer some time to actually talking about that and not talking about statistics and complicated methodological issues, but rather talking about the essence of the research. And hopefully there are people on the other side listening to that. There are also very good books, especially, I mean, there are like Brian Hare, for example, or other names that don't come to my mind now. But anyway, so there are some people and they publish very good books about the scientific part, but it's written in a way that people can understand. So there's a lot of knowledge that I think is accessible to lay people who don't have so much experience. And on the other side, what I also see, but it's a long process, that dog trainers who are really interested in this, they usually have the possibility to learn from scientists. Sometimes I'm seeing dog people, actually also owners, should have a degree in biology. So because that's what well, actually everyone, because that's important for you to understand nature, because what we have to realize that we are very much separated from nature. My professor said in some interview that you just imagine that if you buy a piece of meat packed in the supermarket, you can imagine how many steps it actually went from being a pig at some point to your plate. And this was not like this even 100 years ago. So we are totally separated. So the only way to narrow a little bit back in this way, you have to have this biological thinking. For example, there is the individual or the species, much better, and the environment. They are complementary. So when you see a dog, you should also have to see the whole human family. You have to see the past. Okay, what kind of dog it is? Is it from the street and just spend a few days in the shelter? Now you have it at home. Is it a specific breed that was for 100 years selected for, let's say, being a sheepdog? So this is what you have to see. But then also, obviously, now, what is the similarity and the differences? So, and the third thing is what you want the dog to prepare for. So, for example, what is a problem often is that people don't realize that when they have a puppy, they don't have much time actually to prepare it for many things, because compared to humans, they are a little bit faster, so they will be adults in 2 years. And humans to have more time. So if you miss the Tuesday, you still have the Wednesday and the Friday there. But in the case of dogs, that's not like this. So with the puppies, it's not a little baby who doesn't know anything about the world. No, actually, what a puppy is is doing is waiting for getting experience. Teaching a puppy, but you have to be consequent because they have other problems of forgetting things and not concentrating so much. But if you are, let's say, teaching them only, okay, one example, you can teach a puppy for not eating or only eating for a signal. It's very easy if you do it regularly in the first few weeks. And then you have a dog later on that, does it, and you can prevent things from eating too much, or you can much better control the eating pattern of the dog, especially with those kind of food that is now there, which is very easy to eat. Usually a predator doesn't get a pile of meat, put it on a plate, so you have to dismantle it from the bone and so on. Okay, so that's why people don't have this holistic approach, and that's what I also sometimes miss is missing, because dog trainers are also not telling so much about that. And also another issue is that modern people, actually involving me, so I'm included, want to get results fast. This is what I think maybe you have this expression of pill culture or something like that you get the medicine and that you get, yes, book, and that's all. Now, it's not like that. So, inside, and, whether people take it seriously or they still want the pill, then let's have it. But from the biology, actually, it doesn't follow. So that's what I want to say, that when they would watch really, when people are watching like how a wolf mother is interacting with the wolf puppy, and actually what the mothers are doing to their puppy, but then they prepare the puppy for this kind of life because they can't protect the puppy later on. Wolf mothers bite in a sense that, okay, stop it. And they close really their mouth on the top of the puppy and they stay like this. And obviously this is a preparation for, you have to behave, you have to be under control, and they do it regularly. Let's say they spend quite but wolf puppies also are built for that, so they understand it relatively fast, so they react fast. They don't have to repeat it for weeks and weeks and day after day. This is how species are built, that they are coming on with some kind of general information about environment, and then the environment teaches them how they should behave or what is the success for them. And the social environment, so mother, fathers, other, around, this is part of the environment. So they help in this kind of teaching. It's not really teaching, but we can interpret it that way. So, and then these animals are more successful. Obviously, this teaching is obviously in most cases positive. So when the cheetah is teaching the young cubs to how to hunt, yes, that's also important. And if you are a bad mother and not teaching well, then your cubs will be having hunger and eventually die or starve. I think this is what is not clear, and people just arguing for philosophical reasons, this good or bad thing, but that's not what it's about, I think.
Yes, I understand. And that's probably one of the better explanations I've heard, which is subjective, because ultimately it depends on what your version of success looks like. What is optimal for you? Are you wanting to raise the Olympic swimmer, or are you wanting to raise someone who's just happy in a little puddle of water? So you kind of set the standard that you want for your dog.
And also maybe another aspect, which is also from pedagogy. So I didn't say anything new. So that's very important. That is, you can find this in all kinds of books, that what a dog person could actually do, find out in what way her dog or his dog is special. So what it's really good at. And then they should actually go in this direction. So some dogs might be interested in smelling out stuff. Then you should think about, okay, how can I provide these dogs with opportunity to smell? Going for the woods or different parts of the city, or whatever. Or maybe other dogs are, I don't know what they like, running around. So I think this is again important, that like with our children, although I don't really like this parallel with the child and the dog, but again, the swimmer example, obviously the parent should realize when this is not working for the child. Okay, we try, and then it's, she's suffering or he's suffering, he doesn't like it, and the trainer said, well, there will be never a good swimmer. Then I say, okay, let's try something different. Ask the child, okay, what do you want to do as a sport? With dogs, it's more complicated, but if you watch their behavior, if you put them in as a puppy already, different situations, you might find out, or you can also get helps from others, what your dog is really good at, and then develop it in this direction and offer him, and then he might be a happier dog at the end.
Yes. So essentially, and this kind of aligns with a previous couple of conversations I've had, in that it's better to treat the dog as an individual as opposed to as a breed,
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, that's also an issue with the breeds because breeds are too giving this impression that if you watch, like look at the picture of a border collie or German Shepherd, and yes, this is the breed what it actually is, but it's not. So we have tested sometimes hundreds of dogs belonging to the same breed, and there were huge variability differences. So yeah, that's why I think each dog is an individual, just like a human or anybody else. Actually, also a crow.
So that this might be a silly question, but that's shaped by nature nurture. I understand that there's a lot of genetics have to do with that as well, but then also this key socialization period, and then also the environment, as in after the dog comes to you, regardless of whether it was a puppy or, and then later experiences in that socialization process outside of the litter.
Yes, I mean everything. So logically, you don't have two individuals who are the same. So even if you have, cloning dogs, that's also, I probably don't want to go in this one. If you would clone a dog, some people actually do, which means that there is genetically, let's say, an identical copy. It won't be the same because even you are not the same. So that's also what people are surprised that, oh, this clone dog is not like this dog was before 10 years ago. Yes, because first of all, you are not the same person anymore. I mean, you have changed. So I don't know why people want this time travel. They don't understand this very simple thing that they can't. And logically, dog can't be the same.
Do you find in your experience over the years that you are more surprised by what you learn about the animals or humans?
Well, I learn a lot all the time, and actually I learn to think about these things. So really I was enjoying this, what I'm learning from observing this, and always I think my background in biology and really having this evolutionary logic that also helps me to understand what's going on. But obviously we have also a lot of interesting situations. So, one of our recent, it was not our discovery, but we sort of rediscovered this. And maybe this is a little bit of a science that we have found some dogs that actually know or are able to learn the labels or the names of objects, which actually was really exciting for us because there were a few papers about individual dogs many years ago, but actually when you ask scientists, I'm not saying dog owners because they believe it's more complex, but if you ask scientists whether dogs can learn the label of objects, they would say no. This is not a typical ability, but then it was really surprising for us to find out that there are some individuals, probably now we know about, let's say 60 around the whole earth, so it's a limited population, who are really excelling at that. So they know the names, let's put it this way, the names of their toys up to 50 or maybe sometimes some even close to 100, which is a fantastic ability. And I'm mentioning this because maybe some of the listeners might actually approach us with a specific dog that could have this kind of talent, which is very interesting. So this is what, again, offered us a very interesting avenue for research that was not there actually 10 years ago, but now we can really ask these dogs very specific questions that was actually, I could even imagine, let's say, many years ago, because as, let's say, a typical dog who has not this ability, you can't just, ask this kind of, or find out what goes on in their mind because they don't have this ability to interact with us this way.
I've seen that, but I've always wondered whether or not that's actually artificial intelligence or something. Like how is that actually possible that dogs
Nadine,
can
if you
do
would,
that?
no, we have research group visiting them. We having tons of videos on the internet. We have also a lot of published studies. So these, I have seen with my two eyes, really not so many, but in Hungary we had two dogs, and they are really crazy. So you won't believe them. We had an experiment where they had to learn the name of some objects in the test, and then we waited actually 2 years. The objects were hidden somewhere in the flat. And now after 2 years, or maybe it was just one, I don't remember. But anyway, so it's a long time. They opened the box, but the experimenter had to check the name of the object because we totally forgot. But the dog remembered, or at least some dog remembered the name of the object after 2 years of not being able to play with it. So these are really fantastic creatures. And what is important for them? So we don't think that they are in all respects different from the rest of the dogs, but with them we can really test some of those specific skills that might also exist in other dogs, but unfortunately we can't ask them this way, or test them this way. So this is what is really interesting. And obviously you are right, we have to be careful. So there are a lot of dog skills that are probably fake and not really valid in that sense. And we have to be careful with the videos, what people see. I think, but that's the role of the researchers actually, to find out what is real and what is not real. And these talented dogs, I mean, those who we testing actually, so they are real creatures. And yeah, we are very happy that they are around.
That's fascinating because obviously we control quite a lot when it comes to our dogs. So if they were able to say, toilet, 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 then you wouldn't need to force them to go for a walk whenever you think they may or may not need one. That would make a huge difference to dogs' lives.
Well, that is also an experiment question, whether this kind of communication can be enhanced between a dog and human. In this case, actually, it's really one-sided. So what is special in these dogs, they really understand the name of an object and they pick it up and then bring it to you. So this is the only skill what they do, but we can use this for interesting experiments. What you are for thinking about is when the dog can express in a different way its inner states or other wishes or desires. Now, this is more complicated because so we don't really have any evidence for that. I mean, they can show it in their behavior. So if you are a good owner, you should know when the dog wants to get out and so on, and when the dog wants. And actually, many owners are actually good at it. So the owners also should become an ethologist, so an animal behavior scientist in a way, at least with regard to their own dog, that they figure out what the dog wants. And I don't think that we can't change their communication to a more complex level, but who knows? So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you've just made me realize there's nuance there. So it's not just as simple as here's a word and this is what it means, but also being able to access their own inner state, their own inner world, and then communicate that out to us. Those are completely different things. The word is the one thing, and then also communicating how they feel.
Yes, but for example, I mean, when they're barking or they give acoustic sounds, this is connected to some way. It reflects the inner state. For the dog owner, actually, and dog owners are, as in, there's a variation, but some are very skilled. So, for example, when your dog is in the garden and he's barking, I mean, some owners would be quite good finding out whether there's a cat, for example, that the dog is barking at, or where there is a stranger coming and the dog might change the frequency of the barking or the other aspects of the sound. So actually dogs are expressing themselves, but whether they would come in and tell you, okay, there is a cat in the garden, or just saying cat, in that way of like a human word. So, and different ways of communicating, which we call representational communication, that's not really expected, or at least for this, even in other animals, we don't really have good evidence.
How have you changed over the course of your career in terms of assumptions that you might have had based on what you have learned?
It's complicated because after so many years of studying them, also studying humans, we do a lot of human work, we see the limitations. So now if you would tell me an experiment, okay, but that would be your idea. Let's put a dog, or basically a population of dogs and so on, in an experiment. I would probably able to tell what would be the result. So how they would behave, whether they would be able to solve the problem or rather not. So we know the limitation, and obviously we call it limitation, but that's how the species evolved, and that's what actually provides on the level of the population a good fit to the environment. It's the same for us. We are all not perfect creatures. We have also our limitations. So in that sense, that's easy. But just this last example with this labor learning or these talented dogs, there are some situations where it's unexpected. So which we had seen, okay, well, I mean, we didn't thought about that this is possible. And this is where science in general is very exciting, because if you are motivated and open-minded and you have a interest there, and obviously luck as well, because that's you always need, then there is a chance to actually say that, okay, what you have thought so far about dogs, now this is not just like that, but there are these little exceptions, and we also have this in other factors. So we also, I mean, one thing that might be mentioned is this kind of social learning, where we investigated this imitation or imitative abilities in dogs, which was also, I wouldn't say such a surprise, but again, after we discovered that this is a way that dogs are imitating people and this could be used in various ways, specifically in dog training, then we said, okay, actually it's quite logical that this is there, but still nobody was really discovering it. So we were the first who described it and then tried to develop a procedure, actually a training method, which is very different from let's call them traditional training methods that are used when it's basically only a social interaction is taking place and still our dogs are learning from us something new.
I imagine that you've had lots of different discoveries in your career so far, but which one would you say is the one that excited you the most?
Well, I think this word learning is really exciting, but one discovery, which was the first one, which is now kind of a commonplace, is attachment. So that actually the dog and the human, so the owner and the dog relationship is an attachment relationship. This was our first, we could call it the discovery, but again, it was like a new concept that was introduced in this field. And I always say, okay, if you don't believe me, we published this paper, the first paper on dog human attachment in 1998. So this is a very exact date. And then people should go to the library and check out all those dog books. There are probably quite a lot that before that were published until 2000. And you won't find the word attachment in these books. I could put a lot of money on that. But now everybody's talking about this. So that's actually was our idea that you can conceptualize this relationship as an attachment relationship. And also what I would add to that, which is also important, but it's not a typical child-mother attachment. It's actually more typical adult attachment. And that's very important. The dog is not a baby. I'm sorry. I must really say this because there are so much talking about this. You can have examples, you can have parallels. I also mentioned one during our discussion, but generally it's an adult animal with his own life, with his own decision-making abilities, with his own demands, so to speak, and we should respect that. I think as a dog person, so that is important in this kind of attachment relationship that we should not mix these two, but there are very much similarities and how it looks like the behavior of I think yes, dogs are acting like a 3-year-old or 2-3-year-old child in this situation, but they're still an adult creature, so an adult animal, and that's what we should also respect. Yeah. But that was, I think, a big discovery, and also not the discovery was exciting, but that it got into the thinking of dog people. And now when I think my daughter is a dog trainer, so when she first, observes what's going on, then she said, okay, well, and now we have to manage your relationship with your dog. And that's, basically the story that we're managing the relationship, which means that there is a attachment relationship which is maybe okay, but maybe we can adjust it a little bit just to make your living together happier for you as well and for the dog. Yeah, so this is what I think was very interesting for us. And I'm still very happy to talk about attachment. We could have another long discussion about this topic.
Oh, absolutely. I'm fascinated with attachment theory. I never considered that there might be a link between attachment, as in my attachment style, and my dog will have her own attachment style, because my understanding is that our attachment style is shaped by our parents. But with dogs that are taken out of their litters, for example, prior to 12 weeks, who shapes that? Is it the primary attachment after? Is it the environment?
We're coming back
Yeah.
to the original question. It's everything to the same time, and even it's not just we have a personality as well that also influences how we react to situations. So it's even, you are right, the attachment style that we were living in, what we have seen being among or between our parents, that you can also observe as a child. You had some input on that. Then you are experiencing an attachment to your parents, then you have a personality that will influence, even if you want to have an attachment relationship with your partner, for example, or the dog, you have your own personality. So that all actually has different layers and influence the end result, and not to mention the dog's role, which could also be different, because obviously if you get a dog from a shelter who really is very keen on having this very intensive social relationship, and he had a much bad experience being left alone and separated from humans, again, there is another agent or another partner who has a different, let's say, perspective or demand for being in a social relationship. So even if you don't want to get this dog so close, that's not what he wants. He wants to get close because that's what he learned, that it's actually very important to be close, because otherwise I might lose this person again. So therefore, the end result is has so many factors, and that's where it can be okay, or in most cases probably it works fine. But sometimes, especially if there's we mentioned at the beginning, malformation of the behavior or some unwanted behavior, then very often trainers think that this attachment or this relationship has some problems. So they not focusing on the unwanted part of the problem, but rather going back to the basis and investigate how this relationship is put together. And then they might inform the owners to change their way of interacting with the dog and might even modify the behavior of a dog and teach the dog also to react differently to different situations.
Fascinating. That is honestly, that is so interesting because how we interpret our dog's attachment style will reveal how we respond with our attachment style, because my attachment style with another human being might be different to what my dog brings out in me, right?
Yes.
That kind of like, she's very, I would say, anxiously attached,
Yes.
let's put it that way, which makes complete sense given her life experience. And I'm quite an independent person. So, that's really interesting how we kind of, how she's also changing my attachment style because I'm considering her needs way more than any other being I've ever considered before.
Yeah, that's what happens. So the attachment is actually has both parties involved, and we work on it together and develop a specific one that is typical only for that two participants, actually. Yeah.
Wonderful. Oh my gosh, this was such a lovely conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And
thank you very much for inviting me. I'm happy to come again and we could continue this conversation, even involving other topics that might be more interesting for you.
What are you working on that you are really excited about now?
We have many projects and I just to have a funny kind of ending. One of our projects is now to actually find out how these very nice and happy family dogs react to four-legged robots. Because actually we found out that what will happen in the not so distant future, that there will be robots, let's say, walking around. And there are probably lots of people have seen these four-legged robots. Some people call them actually dog robots. I really hate this because they are not dog robots. They are four-legged creatures. So they will be also appearing in different places. So the question is, a dog, so if you go walking with your dog on the street and suddenly you see that kind of a robot coming, then how would your dog react? And maybe how these robots could be changed in way how they look, what they do. So we are now running this kind of tests where these privileged Hungarian dogs from Budapest have the chance to see first time in their life this kind of four-legged robots, and we just observe the interaction and then try to learn from them. So this is one of the projects that we are now have started and working on.
Where can we learn more about it? Do you publish?
Yeah, we will. I mean, this is now ongoing, so we will publish soon about these some studies. Actually, I think many other researchers are still working on this. This is quite new because these four-legged robots only become more common in the recent 1-2 years. They're quite expensive, so it's not easy to get them. You also have to learn how you're controlling them and so on. So it's complicated in some sense, especially for us who are not involved in the technology so much. But eventually, I think it will be very interesting because there are some other ideas at the moment that maybe how these robots could work together with a dog, for example. So you could have at home a four-legged robot and then dog, and you might actually have some interaction between them or cooperation and so on. So there are a lot of exciting things which we could do. So maybe if you talk next time, we talk more about the robot part than the dog part, but let's see.
Yeah, I would love that. I'd love to chat about this again at some point in the future.
Okay,
Amazing.
thank you.
Wait, before you go, I want to share something exciting from Professor Miklósi. His team runs the G-Dogs project, G standing for genius. It is a long-term scientific study of dogs who can recognize the names of objects. These are not dogs learning new tricks. These are rare dogs who already know the names of different things and can pick the right one when you ask for it. Think of it like this. If you can say, bring ball, bring duck, or bring rope, and your dog goes and finds that exact object from a pile, not just any toy, well, then your dog might be a match. The team are especially keen to hear about younger dogs, but any age can take part as long as they already know between 5 to 8 object names. They work with dogs from all over the world and everything is done online. They show you how to set up your camera at home and guide you through every step. So if that sounds like your dog, please check the show notes and email Professor Miklósi today. He will pass your message to the research team and they will take it from there. What an exciting project to take part in, all in the name of science. Good luck.